Yeah, they moved the pond. So I don't know. Maybe they're coming up with something different.
It's kind of unfair too. They came after like Ridge site that looked like they probably spent
You know that
50 grand on like rendering.
You know DOT's they're on two pages about money in hand. They're set because that rendering now it ups that property value through the roof.
I'd like to call to order the February 1st meeting of the Wilmington Planning Commission. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Attorney, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, we do. And just since we have 6 folks tonight, when the full commission's sitting, it takes a majority vote to pass. So 4 is a majority to recommend an item. And Mr. Goins, I'll jump ahead if it's okay. It's my understanding that you have a conflict with items 1 and 2. Is that correct? And I'll just ask you to stay up for the preamble, but after the preamble, if the commission will go ahead and just take a vote on that and allowing him to recuse himself. And Mr. Goins, if you'll just stay in the audience and then come back up for item 3. Thank you.
All right. Let me read a couple things here. The presentation of the items, all matters requiring commission action shall be presented to the Planning Commission by the planning staff and the applicant. In situations where planning staff is the applicant, there will only be one presentation. Staff will be limited to 5 minutes to make their presentation and shall make the first presentation. The applicant will then be limited to 5 minutes as well to give their presentation and will present after the staff presentation. To maintain an orderly meeting, all presentations shall proceed without interruption unless the commission desires to intervene with questions or comments. At that point, we then convene a public hearing, and at that point, the chair opens the public hearing for those physically present wishing to speak about an item. Those in favor of an item shall be heard first, followed by those opposed to the item. A 10-minute limit will govern the public comment in favor of an item. A 10-minute limit will be allowed for public comment in opposition to an item. When the public hearing opens, staff member will track the 10-minute time periods, and Ms. Painter is the timekeeper tonight. For both in favor and opposed to the statement. The staff member will raise their hand at the 5-minute, 1 minute, and verbally call time when it expires. All groups, organizations, neighborhoods, or similar associations desiring to comment are asked to appoint one spokesperson to present their concerns or point of view to the commission on each agenda item. The public has been encouraged to submit their comments in writing via a web-based form. All comments received prior to 3 p.m. were forwarded unedited to the members of the Planning Commission. The public comment form can be found on the Planning Commission website, and all comments received will be delivered to all members of the Planning Commission and City Council. All comments received will be made available to the public if requested. In addition, if additional time remains from the 2-minute, additional 10-minute public comment periods, the chair, at their discretion, may read some or all of the written comments. Time for reading submitted comments will be limited to any remaining balance for comments in support or opposition. In addition, or in the alternative, the chair, at their discretion, may give a summary of the number of comments in favor, neutral, or opposed. Last thing is the appeal statement. Rezoning requests that receive an unfavorable recommendation from the Planning Commission may be appealed by the applicant to the Wilmington City Council. Appeals should be in the form of a letter submitted to the city clerk within 10 days of this hearing. Appeals for all items heard tonight will be heard at the first city council meeting in February. And at that point, we will move on with the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. So I would ask fellow commissioners to take a look at the minutes again real quick, and, if there's any additions, corrections, let's, make them or move to approve.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes of the January 11th meeting.
Second.
Approve the minutes. We have a second. We will be doing voice vote tonight, so all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes approved. Let's move on to new business. The first item tonight is a conditional district rezoning. Properties containing 2.36 acres located at 2307, 2311, 2315, and 2317 Market Street from OI, Office and Institutional, and CB, Conditional Districting, Community Business, to OICD, Office and Institutional, Conditional District for the proposed religious assembly use and associated facilities. This time I turn it over to Mr. Walton to present to the commission.
Mr. Chair, I apologize.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go any further, I do need a motion to formally recuse Mr. Goins from this discussion. We have a motion. Have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you for reminding me that.
And, Mr. Chair, I apologize. Could that be modified for both items? That way we don't have to have them come back up for the second one.
Yes.
This is completely my fault.
No, that's a fair point. If the commission doesn't have any objection, that vote will count for items 1 and 2. Seeing no objection, thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Jeff, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The applicant proposes to rezone the subject parcels to O&I CD, which is Office and Institutional Conditional District for a religious assembly use and associated facilities. In 2000, City Council rezoned a portion of the rear of 2317 Market from R10 to O&I 1 SD Special Use District for the expansion of the existing English Garden retail store for parking and storage. In 2009, the business closed. In 2014, the zoning was modified again to Community Business Conditional District to expand the allowed commercial uses on the former English Garden property. This item above, it represents for the site location near Princess Place, the Brookwood and Forest Hills community on Market Street. These are some of the existing conditions. The English Garden building, a bungalow that's used as, or used to be used as an office building as well as site. These are some of the adjacent properties, including the commercial on Kenwood and Market Street. Linden Avenue, adjacent to the property, is unimproved, and some of the residences along Kenwood and Market. This map is of the existing zoning and land uses for the site and adjacent properties. A portion of the site contains an office use, but the remaining parcels are vacant. The applicant proposes a 30,500 square foot religious assembly use within several structures. The applicant proposes preschool education during the weekdays. 2 classrooms would be available to accommodate a maximum of 20 children. A hospitality cottage is planned for short-term housing for visiting guests adjacent to Kenwood Avenue. On January 18th, 2023, the Design Adjustment Committee approved waivers for the minimum cross-section for a local residential street, including and allowing Linden Avenue, which is along the north, to be improved with 15 feet of paving and type A curb. So the cross-section is on the screen representing how Linden would be improved with curb, gutter within the right-of-way. And the type A curb is meant to restrict parking from occurring within Linden. Maximum parking allowed on site would be 80 spaces, but since this use is within an existing residential zone, 32 spaces would be required on site, and I believe the applicant is proposing 35. The subject property is located on a special character street on the growth strategies map. The plan promotes development and redevelopment, including reducing pedestrian automobile conflicts and preserving the historic streetscape elements of Market Street. Visibility of surface lots and along primary pedestrian streets such as Market and Kenwood should be minimized. The proposal is consistent with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. The proposal would allow for a religious assembly use, which are typically located within residential areas to serve the surrounding community. The proposal would serve as an appropriate transition between the Market Street corridor and the surrounding residential. And the proposed site plan would potentially close existing driveways on Market Street, resulting in a minimal increase in estimated trip generation. There is one correction I'd like to make in your staff report. Originally, we didn't list any trips for the religious assembly, and we have since corrected that to show what the estimated trips would be if this was a standalone common sort of church. This item will be amended to council if this item moves forward next month. Again, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, and staff believes the request is reasonable and in the public interest and recommends conditional approval with the conditions outlined in the case summary. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Lennon?
Can you, and I apologize if I missed them, but where are the driveways that would be?
Certainly. So I don't have an existing conditions map, but currently there's one large driveway being split between two properties, the former English Garden building as well as that bungalow, and there is a driveway between those two that are potentially to be closed.
Okay, I see it, but those would both be shut off, so access would be from Kenwood or Linden?
Yes, sir. Access would be only from Kenwood and from Linden. I'm sure as all of us have driven Market Street, to have one less driveway would be nice. So that's what they're proposing tonight.
Kind of what I was asking about.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So, and I'm sorry, I'm getting old, I just couldn't hear you, but you said the curbing on Linden would prevent parking or discourage parking?
Yes. They're proposing type A curb, or some people call it H curb, and it's you can't really roll over it, so it would discourage parking within Linden Avenue by design.
But the people who use Linden today to like access a garage or something would still have
Can you
access.
speak into your microphone?
Yeah, I know. The people that live there today that use Linden for access, like to a garage or something like that,
Sure.
would still have access to Linden.
Absolutely. Once Linden is improved, they would go through the normal driveway permit process through city engineering to construct a driveway off Linden at that point.
Okay. So interesting. So they would have to basically reapply for a driveway. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
That would be the normal process to go through. I'm not sure if the applicant has something that they've already worked out with another property owner.
Okay. So that could be a question for the applicant.
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Adams.
Jeff, remind me again, what's the interior lot line setback on ONI CD? And second part of that question is, does this proposed plan meet that for the adjacent bungalow on Market Street?
I don't know those. I have to go back to my book and look up the setbacks, but this is in a frontage area of Market Street where they have the ability to use the urban setbacks to push the building closer to Market. But off the top of my head, I don't know what those setbacks are.
I was asking more about that interior lot line. So, I mean, it's really close to that one bungalow.
Sure. Old code, we would have required a buffer of some sort. The old code used to say residentially zoned or used would have required a buffer or some setback off of there, but all those parcels are all commercially zoned. So, like I said, I don't know the exact setbacks, but we would look at that just as a commercial space or an office, and so new code doesn't have those same protections as old code would. So they would just have to meet the commercial standards or setbacks for that.
One more, and maybe this is for the applicant, so stop me if it is.
Sure.
Obviously, in a lot of our prior meetings over the last month, 2 months, different situations, stormwater is and runoff and how that's all treated. I'll make a statement, tell me if I have the correct assumption.
Sure.
The assumption is when and if this is built, that they would add no additional stormwater pressure to whatever is there today. In other words, whatever the scenario is today, they would not denigrate it. I mean, their responsibility as a developer is they can't make it any worse. Is that a fair point?
I'll have to defer to the applicant on the design.
Okay.
Because I don't know exactly what they're proposing. But it's in our code and law that if they create any new impervious, that must be captured on site.
Okay.
And so I believe that would be handled through the technical review process.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes.
Anyone else? Ace?
Thanks, Jeff. Can you repeat what the technical variance was on the design, from the Design Adjustment Committee?
Sure, there were several design adjustments. They pertain to the design of Linden Avenue. Linden is considered a residential street, and so a typical residential street is 50 feet, and we're looking at a 25-foot right-of-way. So they had to get waivers based on the design of the exit onto Kenwood with the flares of the curb return, as well as the driveway off of Linden towards the rear parcel, how that driveway kind of cuts into 0 feet without a setback on that rear parcel line. Those were a number of the variances, and there was a second one, I can't remember it off the top of my head. Brian, do you remember?
That's okay. I was just curious. For some reason, I thought I heard you say 15, but now I understand it's 25.
It's a 25-foot right-of-way, and they're proposing a 15-foot paved street for that alley, or excuse me, for that avenue.
Okay. And one more, Mr. Chairman. Can you just freshen us up on the parking requirements? I know you said there was a maximum of 80, proposed 32 to 35. Just a little quick 101 on what we're seeing here.
Sure. The new code that we have now, there no longer are parking minimum requirements. The minimum requirements would kick in to a use like this if it's within a certain distance of residential, which it would have to be 40% of the required. And so that's why we said that 80 spaces would be the maximum, but 35 spaces would be required. And that's because it's within a certain amount of residential zoning. And I think it's 32 is what they're required, and then they're proposing 35 spaces on site.
I have one more, Jeff. Is Linden a two-way path today? I mean, can you enter either side, and will it go to a one-way street, or what are the plans, or is that for the applicant?
It may be a question for the applicant, but I think the proposal is to maintain it as a two-way street.
Okay.
When I drove down it, it was definitely narrow enough to be
Yes.
one way, but I believe the intention with this improvement would be that it be a two-way street.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions for Jeff?
Great,
Jeff, thank you. And at this point, will the applicant come forward?
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Cindy Wolf, and I've been working with the organization through this process. Chabad Lubavitch is a philosophy, a movement, and an organization, and it's considered to be the most dynamic force in Jewish life today. Our local Chabad organization amassed all of this property over the past several years with the purpose of constructing a new synagogue and associated facilities. The property is centrally located to the city and certainly accessible from the neighborhoods surrounding it. One of the things that comes into play with the parking and circulation and those types of things is these worshipers don't drive to the facility. They don't operate mechanical vehicles and that sort of thing during the Sabbath. So it's an unusual situation now when we meet the parking requirements and that sort of thing. Obviously, this could become some other type of religious institution in the future, perhaps, but specifically, I just thought it was important to understand some of the dynamics of this particular use. The 2.36 roughly acre tract has been designed for a large building, but you can see, as Jeff pointed out when he was talking about the zoning, we're all commercial zoned right now. It's just a mishmash of what has happened over the years with the different zoning districts that were applied to it. So now we'll have a comprehensive conditional district that will have a specific plan, a specific set of uses, which is basically religious institution and its accessories, and sort of clean up the slate, if you will. So the 2.36 acre tract has a little over 30,000 square feet of gross floor area planned for it within the structures. In addition to customary worship and fellowship activities, there's plans for preschool education during the weekdays, but not large, a couple classrooms that could potentially have a total of 20 kids. I'm not familiar with the different uses, but it is all a comprehensive worship campus, if you will, as far as the different buildings and how they're connected. Access is proposed from Kenwood Avenue. I guess I no longer have a mouse, but you can see that right on the right-hand side, and then also Linden Avenue at the top. So the important part of that is that those driveways to Market Street will all be closed. There's no access at all to the busy Market Street, and those curb cuts will be abandoned and removed. The layout strived for maximum feasible preservation of the existing trees. When they first came to me and we started talking about it, there are a lot of large trees on this site, and over the course of the initial meetings with the neighbors and everything else, the architect and I worked together and with the engineer and the parking requirements and made a lot of inroads as far as the preservation of trees, which will be handled more in detail when it gets to the TRC. Of course, street yard, interior parking area, and foundation plantings add to visual appeal of any project. The stormwater management intended will be a multiple of low-impact design features such as infiltration basins, pervious pavements, cisterns. Howard Resnick's here, he'll be the engineer on this and can elaborate if you need to, but there's no pond, but there are lots of small areas that he intends to use those low-impact design features. Preliminary architectural lean towards the contemporary style, as Jeff showed you, but the frontage along Market Street will meet and exceed that urban frontage requirements to enhance the desired character of the city's gateway, which is what those frontage standards are proposed for, and the edges of the neighborhood. We certainly believe that this is consistent and reasonable. Create Wilmington suggests infill development, certainly, but that is compatible in neighborhoods. Religious institutions have always been considered appropriate as a community pattern characteristic of traditional urban neighborhoods. And in a situation like this, where the worshipers actually walk to the facility, it's a perfect location and we believe scenario for what they're trying to accomplish. And certainly allowing comprehensive development of a whole block of properties is consistent with the concept of infilling underutilized land, but in this case also has a lot of benefits of closing off access to Market Street, improving Linden, which is basically a cart path at this point, and just providing a nice neighborhood facility. So I'd be happy to answer questions. As I said, both the architect and engineer are here if there's something I can't answer.
Any questions, Commissioner Woodruff?
Sandy, just out of curiosity, the frontage on Market Street obviously doesn't extend all the way. I mean, there's this little chunk down there on Market Street.
Something happened with right-of-way apparently at some point in time. Sometimes these road right-of-ways and how they're shown on GIS can be confusing, but this was the boundary survey. So in some way, shape, or form, that little bit of front yard, if you will, was dedicated to the right-of-way.
Okay, and then the structure of the house, single-family house right beside it, is it occupied?
It's an office.
Oh,
It's
that's
not
an
a single
office?
family. Yeah,
Oh,
those
okay.
are all zoned office. I mean, yeah, they're zoned for office, and there is some type of a business in it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Adams?
I saw that you did include building elevations. Do any of the elevations show the size or scale of this building relative to the buildings on either side on Market Street? Or if not, can you talk about how they relate in scale?
I'm going to let the architect do that. It is a single-story building. Obviously, it has higher roof pitches. It is contemporary in nature, but Toby Keaton can certainly answer that question.
Hi, I'm Toby Keaton with Kirsting Architecture. I'm not sure if we can go back to the slide with the elevation. As Cindy mentioned, it is a single-story building. There are, so if one thing that doesn't really play out in these 2D elevations is kind of what the heights of the different things of depth are. So if you look at that top elevation, that is the elevation facing Market Street of the shul. So the word shul means the main worship area. So the shul is a single tall story. It has a clerestory above it. That area kind of highlighted in the front that has a pattern to it, that is kind of a screen material that has glazing behind it. That box that is on either side of it is a short story that is closer to Market Street, about 15 or so feet closer to Market Street, and is probably about 15 or so feet tall. And then, back at that second level is where that, number 3 is pointing to. It is that higher windows. One of the things that we're trying to do is to, provide enough interest on Market Street, enough glazing on Market Street, where that it's not monolithic, but one of the design challenges we have in doing so is noise, headlights, things like that from Market Street. So we made the design decision to put a lot of the glazing up high and kind of push it back, from Market Street to help solve that, but also create that shorter story volume that's kind of closer to Market Street. And then if you look at the elevation below it, that's the area kind of in between the two buildings there. And so they are somewhat two distinct building footprints. They're connected by this covered walkway. That's the kind of skinny part that's further back. That creates this courtyard area in the middle. One question that might be on your guys' mind is why aren't they consolidating this thing into one massive building? Because of our clients who are who they are, and unfortunately the world we live in, a huge design aspect on our plate is solving for security. So that courtyard is actually somewhat of a security measure, in that a lot of the outdoor activities are going to happen within that, but it's within a controlled area that we can kind of control the ins and outs, and people can't kind of willy-nilly make their way towards the congregation when they're outside. And we provided that little gap you see between the two buildings that kind of stretch back into the open courtyard. That's all open air. It's got a covered walkway element that's 10 feet or so off the ground that connects the two of them. So what we thought about was, rather than having one big massive building along Market Street, we're creating smaller buildings to create more of a house scale as we move along. And then even in the longer bar of the building on the right, you'll see those 3 repeating elements there. Those are 3 classrooms. And similar to the shul, those are shorter. They're that 15-ish tall kind of height, and those are reaching out towards Market Street, that kind of constituent amount of space, to try to step that scale down against the houses along that fabric. So hope I answered your question.
Well, and I think the finalization of that is the houses on the bungalow that you talked about, which is a business, and the office on the opposite side, on the left hand, they're both just technically one story, but they all have very steep gables and an upper story in the gable. So roughly speaking, I'd say those two buildings are probably in the 18 to 22 foot range, and this would end up being also, but a different style of design, certainly.
Commissioner Lennon?
I think I understood, but I want to make sure that the parking that you're required to have 32, you're going with 35. That's within the LDC confines. It has nothing to do with the use for the facility or the particular use, I should say. In other words-
Well, I guess because of the nature of this use, we don't need the 80. I mean, some,
That's not what I'm,
Right, okay.
sorry. So this is going to, if this gets a CD zoning, part of the condition is a religious facility,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. So the 35 is within the confines of the current LDC.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's,
And it is bumped up because it is it's that close to a neighborhood.
okay.
So what happens is, we would, as a minimum, we would have to have so many, but then we had to add 20% more because we're in a neighborhood. So they try to prevent on-street parking in neighborhoods in situations like this.
Okay.
So
Thank-
we have met that and slightly exceeded it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kofer, anything?
Not at this time, thank you.
I just said, Cindy, just really take me back through the comment, because of the nature of the Sabbath and all of that entails, people will not be driving.
Not when there is the greatest mass of people. Now,
Understand-
certainly,
Understand. So
Okay.
are people walking from the neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we don't anticipate anybody or any, the parking lot is full and people trying to park across the street, Kenwood, at the service station or at the, I guess that's a daycare center. We don't anticipate
there's
that.
both, yeah.
Yeah, so we don't anticipate any spillover,
No, they do not.
okay?
I mean, like any religious institution, there are certain particular days that things are probably a little
Yeah.
bit different, but this satisfies both their needs and the criteria of the code.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay, Cindy,
I'll be
thank
here.
you. At this point, we will open up the public hearing, and Ms. Painter will be the timekeeper for 10 minutes. I'd like to see if there's anyone in the audience that would like to come up and speak in favor of this proposal. Yeah, no, come on up. And have you have signed in? Okay, so please state your name and address, and then move forward.
Good evening. My name is Mary Bland, and I'm on 101 Kenwood Avenue. So my property runs along the alley,
Okay.
present alley there. And I'm pleased that it will be a small street. That's good. I like that better than the original idea, which was upgrading the alley. And I'm pleased that it will remain a residential street because there is a lot behind my property. So I'm happy about that. One item related to that is there is some confusion when people put their GPS on their phones trying to get to Linden Avenue. A lot of time I'm redirecting folks that are actually looking for Linden Avenue that's 2 blocks further out because there have been properties and construction in between that piece and several blocks over, 2 or 3 blocks up Market. So in relation to that, I don't know if Linden Avenue or possibly Linden Lane, since it's a small little street, would be a better name for it. Let's see, the parking, they dropped one entrance to the alley that was kind of closer to where my actual residence is. So I'm happy with that. And I had I spoke with Cindy about the trees and, you know, all of that. I'm all for vegetation that is maintained. So I'm okay with it. We've got now a pub at the gas station over there and then the daycare center. So it's better for me to have this type of facility rather than another who knows what over there. Some of the, I mean, you know, some things may have been preferential for some neighbors, like a coffee shop or whatever, but they own the property and are developing it, so I'm okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Anyone else desiring to speak in favor? Okay. Anyone desiring to speak in opposition of the project? Anybody need to speak about the project, either side? Then at this point, I will close the public hearing and look to my fellow commissioners. Any final thoughts? Anyone prepared to make a motion?
I'll give it a go, Mr. Chairman. All right, here we go, people. I move that we recommend a favorable, how do we say this again, Sean? Motion that we approve agenda item number 1, request to rezone 2307, 2311, 2315, and 2317 Market Street from office and institutional and community business conditional district to office and institutional conditional district. This request is consistent with the objectives and policies of the following plans adopted by the City of Wilmington. Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. The Planning Commission considers its approval to be reasonable in the public interest because the proposal would allow for compatible infill and serve as an appropriate transition between the Market Street corridor and the surrounding residential neighborhood. Furthermore, the Planning Commission recommends approval of this request.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Adams has voted for a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. Okay, the next item is item number 2, which is the application to conditionally rezone plus or minus 10.27 acres located at 111 Warehouse Lane, 3902 Market Street, and 3804 Market Street to modify the boundaries of an existing multiple family residential district medium-high density by rezoning a portion of the site from MFMH and a portion of the adjacent property to MFMHL. And at that, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick O'Mahony to brief the commission. Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. The applicants requested a modification of an existing conditional district rezoning boundary. Also along with that is a general rezoning request for a portion of a parcel that extends to Market Street. These are highlighted on your screen in green and noted as A and B on your screen and in your agenda. The site is located along Wetzig Road and Market Street, and it's currently under development. This is a vicinity map showing the general vicinity surrounding the request. These are existing conditions and photos of the subject property along Wetzig Road and portions of the property along Market Street, and there are some additional photos here showing the current development of the site with adjacent land uses shown as well. So as mentioned, the site's currently zoned MFMHL-CD, that's multiple family conditional district, an O&I office and institutional district. The site is bordered by O&I zoning as well as CB CS and RB zoning to the north, and that's along Market Street and Wetzig Road, as you see on your map. To the south, there's MD17 zoning and industrial zoning as well. So I think these next two maps really give a clear indication of the request, so I'm going to try and focus on these two specifically, but first a little background on the request. On September 8th, 2020, the subject site was rezoned from CS Commercial Services District to the MF MHCD, the multifamily medium high density conditional district. This was for 192 unit development. This is the Switchyard development. This development was released for construction on February 2nd, 2022, and as seen in the pictures is currently under development and construction. So that area is shown in purple on this map. And as I switch to the next map, I just want you to keep in mind the O&I existing zoning and the letter B to kind of highlight what the requested changes are. So as we see here, the applicant is essentially swapping the area highlighted in purple and shown by the letter B to the O&I zoning district, while the portion highlighted in the yellow and purple in the letter A, that's the area to be included within the MF-MHCD district or the Switchyard site. So that is the two changes that are being proposed in the two rezoning requests. And I just want to reiterate, there are no changes proposed to the site plan of the Switchyard project. It is just strictly the land that's shown here, basically flipping from one district to the other. Just for your reference, these are the originally approved conditional district plans for the Switchyard district, and I highlighted the area that's going to be added to that from the site. It's a little difficult to see, but that area is going to be incorporated into the MFMH conditional district. And here it is shown as their new proposed CD rezoning boundary. This is just the MFMH CD portion of the Switchyard site, and then you can almost see the small sliver of land that continues on to Market Street. That is proposed to be O&I zoning as that continues toward Market Street with the adjacent parcel. So the comprehensive plan identifies this site as an urban mixed-use center and high-density transition area of opportunity on the growth strategies map. These areas promote introduction of housing where appropriate. They also, the plan also supports maintaining commercial corridors. The proposed modification supports the continued development and redevelopment of a commercial property located along one of the city's major road corridors, which is Market Street, and maintains the integrity of an approved residential development for the Switchyard site. Staff believes this proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the recommendations of the Crate-Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, and that the request is reasonable in the public interest. Staff recommends conditional approval with the conditions listed in the case summary. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Does anyone have a question for staff? Commissioner Lennon.
So all of these conditions were already in place?
Correct. These are
So
carryovers
these
from the
aren't new.
previous conditional district.
Okay. How does this happen that little strip of land ended up going down Market Street?
I think that was just a historical property. That event, I think at one point may have been some means of access to the rear parcel. I would defer to the applicant maybe on the history of that, but I believe it was meant to be some sort of access back towards Market Street along that rail corridor.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Kofer.
The only question I had was number 17 on the conditions, and it may be moot and not worthy of striking, but the whole subdivision review board, is that still applicable? Have we streamlined that process? Is it okay to be there, or should it be removed for this moving forward?
I would potentially defer to the attorney on that question. This item did previously go to the subdivision review board for review and approval back in 2020, but I will defer to Attorney Evans.
It's probably moot at this point. I think they received the approval that they needed. And I think this is one of the reasons during the land development code that we had these things go before they went to council. This would have been contingent on that approval after it went to council. So I think it's moot, but since it was a condition, previously approved by council, I don't think there's any harm in leaving it in. But I'll take a look at it between here and the next level. If it's approved by this body, and if we think it's moot, we might remove it.
Fair enough, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Adams?
The existing conditions and the property line with the thin sliver, the way it is today doesn't obviously impact any of the existing development that's either there or underway, correct?
That's correct.
Does this modification, so I guess I know it's a clerical ask of this, but I'm trying to figure out, does this allow something different for the O&I parcel in the front at a future date? I just can't figure out the need to do this.
I will defer to the applicant on the general plans for that O&I parcel. Generally, it's a general rezoning, so we can't take into account specific plans for that area as part of this rezoning request, but it would give them more frontage along Market Street and more of their site to potentially develop with a recombination of those two parcels for the O&I portion. So we looked at it as, this allows for more potential redevelopment of that site located along Market Street there.
Okay, so that's a good, that clarification helps. So the proposed O&I would be a non-conditional.
Correct. That is a general rezoning request.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'd like to hear from the applicant at this point.
Good evening. My name is Dave Spetrino. I'm the applicant and owner of both parcels of land. Let me start with Mr. Lennon's question. In 1988, there was Howell Automotive, maybe a Volvo dealership, and a guy named Hofstetter, and they owned the land behind their shops. However, Wetzig Road was a private road, and it still is at the moment. It's getting ready to get dedicated to the city. But Wetzig was like, you guys suck it. I'm not helping you out. I'm not giving you access to your land. So by however means, I have no idea, they were able to purchase land from the railroad division. The Atlantic Coast Line, I have the deeds going back, and I have the documentation. It took 7 years for them to buy this, what I have been referring to as the long tail. It's 25 feet wide, basically that wall about here. So that 25 feet, though, accounted for and allowed them to now get access. It doesn't matter that the bulk of the access in the middle is mostly submerged. No matter, they now had right away on Market. To answer Mr. Adams' questions, a couple things. I hate curb cuts. Nothing made me happier in the last presentation than hearing about the curb cuts on Market get closed. If I ruled the world, I would change cable, Spectrum, starting with Spectrum, but I would also start eliminating curb cuts all over Wilmington. That would be my platform. But secondarily to that, in here, there would have been a curb cut at that location to be able to access it. Again, a lot can happen in 40 years. Our ability to turn Wetzig Road into a public right-of-way now allows access. But what's more aggravating is my office is currently at in the yellow section where it's O&I now. And I am 100% in charge of my lawn. But if I don't own that long tail, somebody else is in charge of that piece. And that piece is kind of a throwaway piece. It's something that nobody is using. It can't be developed. It can't be approved. And while I own both parcels now, 50 years from now, I probably won't own both parcels at the same time. My dilemma has always been, who's going to be in charge of this long tail if I leave it here? Currently today, I have 3 different tax bills, one for the long tail, one for the big tract, one for my office. This solves a bunch of, call it clerical, but more than anything else, my OCD annoyance with having these random pieces of land that were intended to solve a problem years ago are no longer necessary today. Otherwise, I have nothing to add to Mr. Mahoney's statement. Is there any questions for me?
Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Lennon.
So I would commend you on your public notices, which I read, which emphasized, if I remember in bold, that nothing is changing in terms of either site. words to that effect.
There's nothing, I just want one less tax bill, no opportunity for a curb cut, and I want to be in charge of that tract so that my office and my landscaper is cutting that, knowing full well that there's no mechanism where on the larger piece, if those apartments were to be sold to a third party, the landscaper would have to drive out to market, get on market, drive down, and turn around. There's no way to get from the big site to that long tail unless they get on the railroad tracks.
So I'm going to ask you a couple questions which don't have anything to do with
Sure.
anything other than something we'll talk about at the end of the meeting when items come before the commission. You own both parcels, or all three, actually. The tail, I'm counting the tail as three.
We own the yellow and the purple.
Okay. So there's no, that purple strip, that tail cannot be developed, right?
Well, let's run it out. Go back to one of Mr. Adams' questions. We are currently zoned O&I. If we were to enlarge our parking lot, if we were to develop a part of that land, well then yes, we could now use that 25 feet for a buffer, for vegetation. Something could certainly happen there, and that's why we did the land swap. The whole point of the land swap was I don't want to have to change all my calculations. I have stormwater design, I have everything on the big site. So I had to give some land so that at least it looked like an even-Steven piece so that I didn't have to redo TRC from a technical standpoint. So the goal on the site of the 25 feet, I could load it with vegetation. I can't get that close to the railroad tracks. That's not a good look, but certainly I could do something with it. But what I wouldn't be able to do is put a curb cut there, and I wouldn't be able to sell it to a third party as a tiny little sliver for someone to build a very odd-shaped building in O&I.
How long did you spend working on this?
This is about a year and a half in the process. I won't even tell you how hard it was to get the Switchyard name changed from Wetzig to Switchyard. But this piece, it was 9 months of me crying to staff that this is ridiculous and I shouldn't have to do it. And then it was 6 weeks of staff going, Spatrino, stop talking and just do the paperwork and submit it to us. And then it was me complaining about how much it costs to do this. It is a lot of money to stand in front of you, the check that we have to write. But if you saw the staff report, it comes out to be about $45 per page. So I guess it's even. But yeah, there should be a cleaner way to do this. But because we are CD here, and in hindsight, had I thought about it, I would have done this initially. We just couldn't think that far ahead. You want to make me feel worse, Mr. Lennon, about
No,
my
I'm good.
time and attention? I could keep going. I've lost the bet to Walton that this was going to be quick, so I've already folded on that. Any other questions for me?
Any questions from?
There's nothing illicit going on. I'm just trying to solve some problems and make my life easier since I get stuck with stuff that I did from 20 years ago and still dealing with it.
Mr. Cofer.
Mr. Spatrino, not a question, but a comment. You know, in full transparency of the process for the rezoning, I commend you for the public meeting that no one attended. And I'm glad that you're here to get some of that energy out since no one showed up. But I do want to say one thing just and read it out loud would be that when applicants like yourself come in front for a rezoning or conditional rezoning, what have you, that sometimes they just put the names and addresses of those that attended and no comments. But the person that called you on the phone, you gave a lot of color on what he was saying, and just again, applaud your.
I appreciate that. Please know that I'm also setting a base for the next rezoning, which will not be so exciting or entertaining. I have had 75 conversations with adjacent neighbors documented. And to the gentleman who called worried about the bush hog, we actually finished the brush hogging yesterday. So we have a nice, if you go by the site, it looks stunning. It really is a nice, and I took care of the entire track, even the long tail that is part of the other site. But no, in all seriousness, thanks for your service on this. I'm glad to answer any questions, but Pat covered everything. It's just a cleanup, clerical, nothing else.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
At this point, I'd like to open up the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the proposal? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the proposal? Anyone here to speak about the proposal at all? I guess at this point I will close the public hearing. and look to the commissioners. Any more discussion? Then I guess I'd look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to make a motion. Mr. Attorney, can I combine these, or do I need to do them? I need to do two separate.
Yes, sir, unfortunately, and just to
Okay.
make matters more complicated for Mr. Spatrino, we did need 2 votes on the item.
Just a little more time. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move approval for agenda item 2A, rezoning from O&I Office and Institutional to multifamily conditional district, 111 Warehouse Lane, 3902 Market Street, and 3804 Market Street. This request is consistent with the objectives and policies of the following plans adopted by the City of Wilmington: the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. Planning Commission considers its approval to be reasonable and in the public interest, as the proposal allows for additional commercial development along a major corridor while maintaining the integrity of the previously approved conditional district development. Therefore, the Planning Commission recommends approval of this request.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Adams seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion 2A passes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll keep going with
Yeah.
agenda item 2B, if I may. Like to move approval, for rezoning from MFMH conditional district, multifamily residential district, medium-high density, conditional district to O&I Office and Institutional for 3804 Market Street. This request is consistent with the objectives and policies of the following plans adopted by the City of Wilmington: the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. And the Planning Commission considers its approval to be reasonable and in the public interest, as the proposal allows for additional commercial redevelopment along a major corridor while maintaining the integrity of the previously approved conditional district development. Therefore, the Planning Commission recommends approval of this request.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Kofer. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, agenda item number 2 passes as well. Okay. Next item for discussion is agenda item number 3, which is a application to rezone 1.05 acres located at 2722 Carolina Beach Road from RBCD to RB Regional Business District. And at this point, Mr. Walton will preview this for the commission.
Sure, thank you. The site includes approximately 1.05 acres of land and is currently zoned RB Regional Business Conditional District. In 1991, City Council rezoned the site from CS Commercial Services to RB SD at the time, which is Regional Business Special Use District, for an assembly use for the Veterans of Foreign Wars, or VFW. This is a regional site. A photo of the site is just south of the Roses Shopping Center, across the street from Victoria Village subdivision on Carolina Beach Road. These are some of the existing conditions. I'm sure everybody has seen the airplane on Carolina Beach Road. That is this site. One metal building is all that remains on site. These are some of the adjacent photos. Across from Marion Drive is the county schools office, as well as several commercial properties along Carolina Beach Road. This map is of the existing zoning and land uses for the site and adjacent properties. On March 4th, 2022, the property was sold, and the VFW use is no longer in operation, and the existing building is vacant. The subject property is located within an urban mixed-use center and suburban commercial retrofit area of opportunity on the growth strategies map. The map encourages retrofitting underperforming and outdated suburban buildings and sites. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. The plan calls for infill sites within existing commercial areas to be developed in a manner that is compatible and consistent with the existing development pattern. The proposal supports the retrofit of an underperforming and outdated commercial building, and the proposal would remove an outdated condition restriction to allow redevelopment within an existing predominantly commercial area. The proposal is consistent with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, and staff believes the request is reasonable and in the public interest, and we recommend approval. And I believe the applicant is also here to make a brief statement as well.
Any questions for Mr. Walton? Okay,
Great.
Jeff,
Thank
thank you. Would the applicant please come forward?
Hi, everybody. My name's Paula Baisden, so I'm here as the will be tenant of this building on behalf of the owner, Samir Khatib, to have the condition removed from this very limited opportunity that we have in Wilmington, a space bigger than this room where people can gather and do things and have plenty of parking on site. We don't have a lot of those kinds of spaces in Wilmington. So to remove that condition would help us take off a severely limiting condition on a space in the city of Wilmington. Now, currently, us as the new tenants, we hope to have this as a micro studio for film, the arts, and photography, and to have a living set within it that is a coffee shop. So we are tenants, though. We are not forever. So really the point of this presentation is just to remove the condition that makes it for fraternal organizations only so that it can continue to support all types of businesses far into the future for the city of Wilmington, especially because it presents that rare opportunity to have a large space for types of gatherings and creativity and things like that. The coffee shop part, for me specifically, for us, is sorely needed in this neighborhood. A place for creative minds to gather and get things done together. And we're not asking to do any kind of construction or anything extensive. It's the same exact building. We're not changing any access. We're cleaning it up and offering different use inside of the same building. So it's not a huge leap. Any questions?
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Lennon?
So I just realized I didn't read this correctly. So the condition on the VFW use was placed through the conditional district rezoning that was done in 1991?
Yes.
Okay, so there's not a deed restriction to it?
No, there's no other restrictions. I've done all the other paperwork for the business through the city, and they said literally the last thing that would have to be done to have any other business in here is to remove this fraternal organization's condition, and that's it. And that.
So I'm having deja vu.
Yeah.
How long did this take you?
To do this? A few months.
Okay, for the sole purpose of removing that condition?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, once I got to the zoning office, things went really quickly. But there were so many steps before that it took longer.
Okay. Thanks.
Of course.
Commissioner Adams?
This is somewhat humorous, but beforehand, we were all wondering what we were going to do with, what are you going to do with the airplane?
The Air Force owns the airplane. They're in no hurry to pick it up. I told them no rush. So it'll probably be there for a long time. People have asked if it's for sale, so.
Anyone else?
Great. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. At this point, let me open the public hearing. Anyone here to speak in favor of the applicant's request? Anyone here to speak in opposition to the applicant's request? Anybody here to speak at all to the applicant's request? All right, I will close the public hearing. And at this point, I would look to commissioners to, in the famous words, what is the will of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to, for approval of agenda item 3, for the request to 2722 Carolina Beach Road to rezone from RB Conditional District to RB. This request is consistent with the objectives and policies of the following plans adopted by the City of Wilmington: the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. The proposal would allow for the reuse and redevelopment of a commercial property along one of the city's major commercial corridors. Therefore, the Planning Commission recommends approval of this request.
I have a motion from Commissioner Adams to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Goins is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion passes. At this point, we will move on. Congratulations. We will move on to other business and items from the commission. Do we have any items from the commission? Commissioner Lennon.
Mr. Chairman, first and foremost, I'd like to wish our chair a happy 35th birthday in her absence. I hope she's having a good time wherever she is. I do have a couple things, and I guess I'll start with the last two items. Mr. Attorney, is it a function of state law or the LDC or city ordinance that applicants have to go through? I mean, we just had two items before us, which candidly are almost, these are my words, almost like consent agenda items, right? I mean, sort of the same magnitude of simply swapping some land, which, and then removing a condition. For somebody to have to go through all that seems excessive to me.
State law.
State law.
Yes, sir.
So
In both examples, it was a conditional district, which once a conditional district's approved by council, it takes council to modify any of those conditions. So it has to come back through the process.
So in item 2, because the tail was part of the conditional district, it had to go through that,
Yes, sir.
even though the new part was straight up, just straight rezoning.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'll talk to another group of people about that.
Sorry about that.
And then my second item was I'm curious if somehow we're keeping track of, I'm curious how many things are going before the Board of Adjustment, and this is more for staff, from the LDC, because I know we talk about some items where we continually have text amendments and stuff like that, but I don't know that it's our place, but shame on me, I don't watch those meetings if I even could, or read the minutes, but is there a theme coming through in those? Because I take it that's where we would see LDC issues crop up.
Mr. Lennon, I would say one of the things that staff is doing right now is looking at both the Design Adjustment Committee and the Board of Adjustment to identify, to see if there are themes and common requests that are moving to those boards. And then looking to say, okay, if we're seeing the same request over and over again and that request is being granted, on what basis is it being granted? And then can we go back and adjust either the land development code requirements or the technical standards to establish objective criteria that would remove those items from needing a quasi-judicial proceeding?
Okay, is there, and I guess the way we find out about that is when you bring text amendments, proposed text amendments.
Correct. And in the case of the Design Adjustment Committee, those would have to be amendments to the city's technical standards and specifications. But that process is ongoing. It was actually a conversation this afternoon, and we've started that process. And I've also talked to the zoning administrator about the Board of Adjustment, and we'll see if she's seeing any commonality in the items that are being brought forward to that board. We have noticed an increase in both of those entities in terms of the number of applications they're receiving.
And is that increase based just by virtue of the new code, or?
We're seeing it after the new code, and that's what we're trying to figure out is it a new standard that is causing that increase in caseload?
Okay. I mean, this is to the rest of the commission, but I, for one, would be curious just to be kept abreast of that, because it's.
Well, actually, I for two, because having chaired that Board of Adjustment before I joined this commission, and it was right as the new land development codes went into effect. That was always an intellectual thought on, and so I'm glad you brought it up, because I was wondering, how much was being held back, by applicants because waiting for the new codes to come into effect, and then would that all of a sudden open a floodgate? So I would be curious as well to.
And so we'll come back with some additional information on that. I will say that I think we've already made at least, and again, Catherine would be better to answer this, but one of the items that we saw early on had to do with sizes of accessory structures and accessory dwelling units, which were capped at 900 square feet under the new code, and both you and the council have already approved an amendment to bring that up to 1,200 square feet, as well as make some other changes related to accessory structures that we were seeing numerous applications going to the Board of Adjustment to those standards. So we have already gone back and made adjustments to those.
Well, I think that goes back to the, maybe it was our last meeting when or the last time you presented adjustments to the code, and I remember asking, the planner, is this 900 to 1,200, is that going to open up or unleash some pent-up projects? So I think you bring up a great question, and I really would. I would ask you guys to come back with an update, because I think it's a great question.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the commission? Okay, items from the staff.
I'll just provide a brief update of the items that came before this commission last month. One was the Willard Street street closure. Both staff and this commission voted to recommend denial of that. That item is being postponed as staff is working with the applicant, and I would like to thank the applicant for working with staff as to seek alternatives to that street closure. And I think we'd also like to thank Mr. Lennon for his creative idea on the angled parking, because that is an option we're looking at for that stretch of right-of-way. So the applicant is, it's a positive. The applicant is working with staff and has agreed to postpone that decision before City Council so we can work on some alternatives that don't involve closing right-of-way.
Brian, let me ask you a question. So you work through that process. So this is a process question. You work through that with the applicant, and I, like you, I'm glad to see they're fully engaged with you. You come up with different ideas. Does the process bring those new ideas and bring basically new proposals, that bring that back to this body before it goes to council, or does that go straight to council?
I would think that if we come to some form of resolution that's beneficial to the applicant and the city, that they would just withdraw it, and you wouldn't see it again. Okay. Unless part of that involved the rezoning or some other action that this commission would have to act on.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sure you had something else.
Yes, and the other item was the Victory Gardens rezoning. There was the 24 townhomes. There was a lot of discussion about stormwater in the area. There's some historical flooding issues in that neighborhood that were brought to light as part of that request. So a lot of that discussion revolved around what's going on in the area. And, I guess initially they were asking, well, how does this project impact it? But it really led us to put a spotlight on the actual flooding issues in that area. And I think it's provided staff an opportunity to be a little bit more proactive in providing that information, so we're not caught off guard by the neighborhood. So we're going to be increasing the kind of information that we provide in our report to let you know if there is a historical flooding issue or some kind of stormwater issue or a stormwater project in the general vicinity, just so you're aware that we do know what's going on and we're actively working towards correcting those issues.
I thought as I told you, I had an opportunity to speak to one of the homeowners, and I thought the homeowners, the project was voted to move forward, but I thought they did a great job of as you said, highlighting an issue that really needs attention in their neighborhood. So I told him, I said, you guys, you got to feel good. I mean, the process worked in that regard. So, yeah, Commissioner Lennon.
But I also think it worked that the project got approved. Am I correct?
Yes, the project did get approved as recommended by staff and this commission.
So my only comment is just, if I understood you correctly, and I don't blame them, but council is requesting, please correct my words if I'm not saying this rightly, is that staff, I guess, provide them additional information if there's an historic issue in a particular neighborhood where a rezoning request is occurring. Is that?
Yeah, I think the council wants to be more proactive and be aware of a known drainage issue. It doesn't necessarily impact a particular project, but the general area. I think in this situation, it would have been nice to have that information to deliver to the neighborhood in advance of the meeting, so they knew that we knew this problem existed, and there are plans in place to make stormwater improvements in this area, and it would have been nice for staff to get out ahead of that and get that information out in advance, and I think we're going to try to do that in the future.
Okay, so and I'm sorry to belabor this, because the first time you said it, it scared me a little bit, because it reminded me of the congested roads theory, where this road's too congested, so we can't approve a project. So the issue on this was the city already had stormwater plans developed to address part of Victory Gardens?
Yes, the issue that came up in this project is that area of town has known stormwater issues. And as such, the engineering and public services staff have projects in place that are, obviously it takes time to get by right of way and easements and everything else, but there are projects in place that are actively working on correcting those issues in that area. Now, the rezoning itself, and I think it was mentioned earlier that when you come in with a project, you can't have more water leave the site that you already have leaving the site. So they're kind of two separate issues. The project itself has to meet state and city stormwater regulations to not impact off-site properties with stormwater. And then on top of that, there was a known issue in the neighborhood that kind of put a spotlight on stormwater in general at that meeting.
But there was also a known solution that was in process?
Yes, sir.
Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else from the staff?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Brian a quick question?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Just on the Willard Street closure, a procedural question that I'm just unaware of. With a unanimous rejection or disapproval of that item, it still goes to council if they decided to pursue it? Or is that via an appeal or just a normal agenda item?
Any street closure would just take your recommendation forward. It's a state statute that governs how that process is managed. So it doesn't require an appeal by the applicant. It would just, our code requires that this board make a recommendation regardless of what that recommendation is.
And just pick one of these random agenda items tonight. If it was unanimous disapproval, would it continue the path that
they would have to appeal it?
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? I just want to thank the staff for their continued support of the commission. Much appreciated. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Probably going to get a unanimous one on that. I've heard the second from Commissioner Woodruff, so all in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, we are adjourned.